Perfect. All right, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of the M Sister Studios podcast. It's special because we are both recording and hopefully uploading on Veterans Day. And I am here with a veteran herself. Her name is Jen Taz Vazquez. And let me go ahead and let her introduce herself. Welcome to the podcast, Taz. How are you?
Thank you so much. And happy Veterans Day.
Yes.
So thank you. And thank you today for what you're doing, which I hope we get to talk to a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool. I love it, love it, love it. You know, the fact that you're doing this 22-mile ruck march, like in honor of veterans and as a way of service and giving back, because that's huge.
Right.
As you mentioned, I'm Taz, military nickname, call sign, if you will, from my military days. I retired about 3 years ago from the Air Force after serving it about almost 25 years. And Taz is from, it got dubbed for me if I talk too fast because I've had too much caffeine, or multitasking if I go squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. So that's kind of where, Taz came about. And then I'm also a fitness instructor, life after the military. I'm a fitness instructor as well as a life coach and a writer. On the fitness side, Taz was kind of stuck. So that's what they all know me as I teach dance fitness and then rock, which is for those with Parkinson's. So that's kind of like the big picture, who I am. Shall I just leave it back to you and let's ask questions?
Sure. So I'm curious because for those of you that may have not watched any of our previous videos yet, you should actually, or you will be able to see Taz in some of our previous stuff, or at least mentioned and whatnot. I'm curious because I love learning about people, learning about their backgrounds
Me too.
Why like they decided to, or what led them to their career choices and stuff. And I know since it is Veterans Day and we celebrate all our military members, past, present, and future, because some might be signed up and just waiting to go off to whatever their training may be. I'm curious to kind of what led you to the decision as to why to join, and also to like, everything that goes about with that. So like, why the Air Force? What specifically was your job role? Because there's so many stories that could come with your specific job role, right? Maybe some experiences that you may have had that be fun to share with our audience. And then we'll start from there and kind of lead into like how that affected what some like your decisions now as to like, why did you be a fitness instructor? Why a life coach? Why to work with the foundation, which we'll talk about here. I would hope so. And I'm assuming, yes we'll talk about here in a little bit. So yeah, so kind of start off with that. So how, why, who, what, where, when, why for the military career?
Yeah. So for me, for my military career, my mom would like to say that she put my hand in the hand of the ROTC instructor in college. And she almost did. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do when I was going to college. I think my parents, they had a discussion because my dad went to the Air Force Academy, and they had a discussion of, well, wouldn't it be cool, if your daughter went? And this was at a time they had not yet let women into the academy. And my dad was like, oh, women can't go there. And my mom was like, they will. And so, of course, over time, things opened up for women in the military. But for me, I like to tease my parents, or at least my dad anyway, because he was also active duty for 10 years and then guard for 10 years. And I tease him saying, no, I wanted a life. So that's why I didn't go to the academy. Sorry to those academy grads out there. Just a little light fun, just like we do, teasing each other about the services. And so I actually, when I went to school, I went to University of Illinois, and that's where I started doing ROTC. And I really loved it because one, in high school, I did Civil Air Patrol, which was more on the community service side, but it also had a little bit of, we wore uniforms, and it was kind of a pseudo-military organization, but geared towards search and rescue. And so I was kind of familiar with that. And then, of course, my dad being military, we'd already moved so many times in my life that but I didn't really think of it, or that's what I wanted to do. But then once I joined ROTC, same. The camaraderie, the sense of family, the activities. And so I became a little ROTC nerd, I like to say. I did Arnold Air Society and Pershing Rifle, the drill team, the color guard, all of it. And it was commissioned, as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. Holy cow, back in 93. Time goes by. And what's really cool is my dad actually commissioned me. So he read the oath of office, and I was reflecting today, about Veterans Day. And sometimes, now I've been retired for 3 years. And so sometimes you forget the things or the sacrifices and what it means to serve, just because you kind of, in a way, you're just used to it. You're in it, you're living it, right? And you don't think, wow, this is a huge sacrifice, or the impact that it can have in our lives, right? And so it's just really cool. And I was thinking back going, wow, my dad served, I served. He pinned on ranks for 3 of my promotions. He read the oath of office for 3, and he was right next to the general officer for the last one. He couldn't read the oath because I outranked him. And so he could stand there, which is also a fact my mom loves to share, is the fact that his daughter outranked him, but they're both very, proud of that. But in terms of what I did for the military or during my service time, I was an intelligence officer. And that may sound like, ooh, James Bond, not really. More in this case of, it's being an analyst, understanding patterns and linkages and what's going on in the world, and how do you distill all those sources into information that can be used by decision makers to do whatever it is that needed to be done. And so there's a lot of different jobs within the intelligence career field. And so I experienced several different levels during my almost 25 years. And I also did other things too. I was an executive officer, meaning think of it as, civilian equivalent of an office manager. That would be kind of the equivalent for a couple general officers. I was also an instructor a couple times. I taught ROTC at Kent State University, and then also the combat targeting course at the schoolhouse in Texas. And then I also had the honor and privilege of being a congressional liaison and helping, share the Air Force story at the Hill. And I trained because I love history. And I got trained as a Capitol staff guide. So I was able to give tours of the Capitol to those military members that were going to talk to their members of the House or members of the Senate. So that was a pretty cool assignment. And then of course, like military, I've been deployed quite a few times, several times in the sandbox, and then some other, rough places like Italy.
Rough. I don't think that's the
really
proper term.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like the big picture. I think in my life, I think I added it up, and I've moved about 22 or 23 times in my life. Yeah, and so some awesome adventures. I think you asked me, okay, what were a couple things that I remember? One kind of funny one. This is on the leadership side and the mentoring side. As I think I was I had to have been a second lieutenant or a captain, so junior officer at the time. And I remember that I was going to be the lead, taking a team from my squadron over to an exercise in South Korea. And we were in different places in South Korea, and a couple of the enlisted folks, unfortunately, they ended up having to sleep in a gym. They, in cots. They were kind of given not their designated duties. They were given additional duties. In my opinion, at the time, they shouldn't have been, because it wasn't what their training, what their jobs were. They were just given other assignments, kind of filler assignments. So anyway, so we come back and I write up the trip report for the commander and the deputy at the time of my unit. And in the trip report, I had written, that this training had no value in it. and I wrote that there because I'd always been taught, hey, talk like you write like you talk. I remember that was one of the things I took away early on from my very first boss, Colonel Dang at the time. And I always thought that was really cool. So I did it in this next job. Well, I kind of got called on the carpet and had to come report to the deputy commander standing at attention. And she was telling me, now, Jen, saying sucked in a trip report is just not professional. And there's always a training value. And that so stuck with me all these years later. And I always laugh anytime that I think of the fact if, there's an event in our lives and you go, this sucked. And then that always comes to mind going, and it's a good memory jogger of, all right, well, maybe it wasn't fun, but what can I learn from it? What can I take away from it? And so that's always stuck with me there. So that was just one silly, funny story. I think one of the ones that stand out, there's a lot of great assignments. I really love the ROTC assignment and having the opportunity to be there right in the midst of college as the college students are deciding, hey, what do they want to do in their life? Who do they want to be? And getting excited about and career opportunities. And just being with them, as they're thinking their college mind of, hey, what are my friends doing this weekend? Oh, I have this next test. To going, oh, hey, where's my future going to be? What am I going to be doing? And so that was really cool to be able to do that. Also very, it was sense because that was right about the same time that 9/11 had happened. And I had just come back from donating bone marrow in DC because I was a match for a 13-year-old leukemia patient. And so I had said, yes, we'll do it. And so they flew me to DC and I donated bone marrow and driving back past the Pentagon over to the airport to leave. And then literally that next day is when, unfortunately, 9/11 had happened. And so it was always stuck in my mind there, the importance of being a mentor, being a leader, giving back and being of service, because you never know, what's going on in life or who need that. And so 9/11 was one that always stands out in my mind, and that linkage then of ROTC and the importance of that service. I think one other that kind of stands out is that I'll always remember is I spent a year in it was a joint mission between the Department of Defense and the State Department working in Israel, and so we were actually working at the level, if you will, with tacit approval. With the Israelis, the Palestinian Authority, and then the Jordanians of helping at the time work with that two-state solution and training the security services, over in Jordan in support, or it was the Palestinian security services and responders, over there. So just to be there, because my background, for undergraduate degree was political science, international relations, and then one of my master's is in Middle East studies. And so I've always, to be there where you have this crossroads of world religions, history, architecture, art, it was just amazing. And then also to be there on the ground from a political science, international relations, of, hey, here's a way that the two-state solution could actually, work. And then we'd come back, and we discussed that at Capitol Hill. It was the 3-star general who was in charge at the time, and I was a strategic advisor. So it was just that was an amazing experience to be able to at that time and work that mission.
It sounds like from everything that you've said, 25 years is a very long time to be in the military. Because when we're taught like, oh, if you can strive for the 20 years, whether it's fully active or in the reserves. And so I can't imagine how many like different experiences that you've had, all the different people that you've met. Probably, you could attest to this, probably some of the experiences that you never thought you would have if it wasn't for the decision that you made early on, in college to do ROTC. So do you think, going back a little bit, do you think that, did you know right away that you wanted to be in in intelligence, since your undergraduate degree was in political science and
great question.
And what is it? What did you said political science
and Middle East studies was
Middle East studies. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I didn't know right away. It not until sophomore year at the time in ROTC, the summer of sophomore year, the way it was structured then is we they called it a shadow program. And we actually got to shadow, I think, was it sophomore or junior year? It was junior year. We'd already gone through our training. Yeah. So junior year. And we had an opportunity to do a shadow program at some bases. And so I put down Intel as something that I was interested in. And so I actually got to shadow officer at a base. It was in Pope, North Carolina at the time. And I got to exercise injects. It was a scenario between India and Pakistan. So remember that, and designing exercise scenario injects that they were used for an upcoming exercise for training purposes for the units. And I thought, this is so cool because you get to bring in your knowledge of political science, international relations, and history, and you get to design this training program. And then knowing what's going on in the world. And so I was hooked. And that's what I knew I wanted to do then. But then the Air Force, the way it worked was you could put down your junior, senior year, you put down the different, think of it as your wish list. Here's the thing, careers that I want to do. And you can't just put one because, it's the needs of the Air Force. So you may not get that one. And you've got to be prepared for that. So I put that, I put like public affairs and a couple others. And I ended up getting intelligence as my first. So, and then ended up going to San Angelo, Texas for training. And then from there, Omaha, Nebraska was my very first assignment. And I remember getting that assignment drop. I'm like, Omaha, what? And, to say that for when I look back on my military service, there's times, like I mentioned earlier, where you sometimes forget what it means to be of service and what does that really mean, right? Because when I look back at that, I think of the times away from family, only my family, but then when I was married at the time, and the time we spent 9 of 19 years apart, and I think of the sacrifices of canceled events, of plans made and then had vacations, literally, that either canceled prior to the vacation or I'm vacation and got recalled, had to go back. And so then the vacation gets short. Those dark 30, whether it be PT sessions or, physical fitness sessions, or because you have to get called in because of a situation going on in the world, and that you've got to, be there for your folks as well as to help support the senior leaders. Those late nights, working whatever at various levels. When I was at the Pentagon, I can think back, to working at 8:30 at night, and, still had a 45-minute commute home, and then had to repeat it to be back at work, by 5:30 in the morning. I already mentioned I moved over 20 times in my life, and the impact that can have. And then, and also being in service, there's times where we're asked to do things. You don't really think of the things you see or the things that you're asked to do from morality or from a trauma impact, in your life in that sense. And then, of course, also, friends and family, coworkers that aren't with us anymore because for various reasons, whether it be because of combat, and training accidents, or, because of suicide, unfortunately. And we'll talk more about that, with the foundation, and what that means. But also that time, and I did experience toxic work environments. I experienced, as a woman, discrimination at times, for being a female in the military. And so those are sometimes some of the sacrifices and the things that happen. At the same time, when you look at the flip side, and I remember the camaraderie, I remember, and you've experienced this, the difference, the excitement of a new place, a new journey, a new adventure. Times that you get deployed or you go on a temporary duty assignment, it's all, it's and being part of that mission, being part of something greater than ourselves. And those are, that's kind of what lingers then when you think about service. I was thinking about that, sometimes like today, and a very small percentage of the US population that actually serves in the military. And so sometimes people, it's hard to relate to a military person and what did they really go through? And so, to be able to find a way to articulate the positive and the negative as experiences for the military, I think helps normalize it and helps bring us together where we can relate. So it's not a matter of us versus them. It's really more of, hey, here's the experiences that I had, and because of it, here's what I'm able to do now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen, and also too, in terms of, thinking about Veterans Day today and everything, like, is for individuals, because like individuals who, since the population is so small, especially I've noticed when my job's not a good example because like half my team are veterans. So like that's not a good example, but Washington's a big veteran based community. So I think this area is not a good example in general, but I'm saying just all over the United States, since the population is so small, it's good for when individuals are curious about what one of maybe their coworkers have been through and asking about it for them, the family members, because family members, they'll say something and post something like, oh, my son or daughter is in the military, or their significant others in the military and everything. But I think, like you said, normalizing talking to individuals that have the experience, also talking about the good and the bad, because both exist in in any type of way, shape, or form, and just having that communication line open with individuals that you may know that are either close friends or just someone that you maybe went to school with, and like family members, whether you're close relatives or like distant, like first or second cousins, whatever it may be, having that conversation with them and kind of learning what they're about, because a lot of times, especially if they transition over to the civilian side, things that they've been through and things that they've learned will impact, who they are, how they work, what jobs they may have, everything. And that normalization conversation, I think, is really important, especially during military for sure, but as well as post-military, to kind of help them, I think, also to ease back into society, because for some individuals it can be really hard for them, especially based on their certain job roles, what they did, where they went, so I think just making the conversation normal with veterans is a big step to help people to understand, and also to help that veteran to kind of be like, okay, like what I did is normal. Because it could be too, you have a conversation with an individual about the goods and the bads, and they might have went through the same thing, it's just different.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. And I also think it helps, like you said, because I remember when I transitioned from the military, and it was a huge transition, and I thought, oh, I'm ready, no big deal. But even for me, it was, because I'd already, I'd been doing the fitness, instruction side for several years prior to retirement. So I thought that, hey, I already have, that foot in the door on the civilian side, and that it's not a big deal transition. But it was a huge transition, because that sense of camaraderie, that sense of community, the things we take for granted in terms of vocabulary, language, daily, you could have one job in, one service, I could have another job in another service, but we can still bond because it's military and we experience the same kind of things. And you don't have that sometimes when you're in a community, where there's not a lot of military members. And I can remember when my first assignment, or listen to me, my first assignment, when I retired from the military, I was a member director at a local YMCA. I was directly responsible for leading and mentoring and being a supervisor for 50 people. And they were all part-time folks, wide variety of ages, from 20s until 60s. And I found that, that you get so ingrained in your vocabulary and your language. We love acronyms in the military, like many services, right? Or organizations. And this one, I would say something to a team member like ROE, and they would look at me like, what are you talking about? Oh, rules of engagement. Here's what that means. Or, just some things you just took for granted to say that are just part of everyday life. And you had to remember, wait, does this really make sense? Does that, will that translate into what you're talking about? So yeah, they used to tease me all the time about my military lingo. So it was pretty funny with that. But I also think, when you talk about being of service, because sometimes it's hard for military members, even today or other, throughout times, when someone comes up to us that we may not know, they say, thank you for your service. And a lot of times, our reaction may be just to kind of shrug, or maybe we're feeling uncomfortable about that, or because like you said, we haven't really thought about, well, what does it mean to be of service? And, when you really take a moment to be present and to really be mindful of what that means, it's really profound. It doesn't matter what you did, because there were still sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
And there were good and bad, that we accepted when we said, signed that paper and read that oath. So I think it's important to someone who's wanting to thank a military member, or to not shrug it off, to really take a moment and to go, well, what does it be of service? And just thank you, because like you said, you have an opportunity, an awesome opportunity that, and to connect with somebody.
Right. Oh, yes, for sure. I remember, I think when I first transitioned over from active to the reserve side, and people would say like, thank you for your service. I'm like, I also too shrugged, but now like if someone says thank you, I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I don't know exactly what I say, but now like I acknowledge and thank them. For sure. I've noticed that transition. I think it also has to do with just post-active service growth and starting, because I think, and you could probably attest to this too, I think once transitioning from active to either the reserves or the civilian side, you have more time to kind of like reflect over your career and kind of like what you did and kind of make sense of it all, because now like you have time to stop and think, and you're like, oh wait, like what I did, I may have gone through something bad, I may have gone something good, but like what I did was actually very helpful. Like what I did, in whole, what I did in my military career was successful, was helpful. We did have to make the sacrifices, but it was for this specific cause. So now when someone says, oh, thank you for your service, acknowledging them is now like, it's the first thing, because having that time to reflect on military service and now being like, okay, like now I understand, like now I can see the light through whatever the bad things may be. So I think that's very important. I think sometimes military members, we just sometimes don't have the time to sit down and actually reflect, especially, at least for me. And if you have a story, you can say it too. Active duty, you're just all over the place doing so many things. I mean, you mentioned that you were working almost like, it sounds like, 16, 18 hours a day, something like that.
Sometimes,
right?
Sometimes
Sometimes. Same for myself and my husband. Being security never sleeps. So like, you have to go into work regardless of if there's like rain or snow or like something's happening on the base, like you have to be there. So long hours, and you don't have a lot of time to reflect. So I think definitely putting time aside to actually reflect on what you've been through, what you've done, your successes, your failures even too, because you can learn from them, is important for sure. But off that tangent, so you have had this very long, successful military career, which some of the stuff I've already heard I'm jealous of. So of where you've been and what you were able to do. And you talked a little bit about transitioning from active duty to kind of your first job with the YMCA. So can you go into a little deeper about how that transition was? Because in the beginning, you mentioned you're a fitness instructor, you're a life coach. So kind of like what led you towards from the intelligence side of things? Because intelligence, I would think, even though as a like right off the bat, the title is different than life coach or fitness instructor, kind of like what during your military career, what you did kind of influenced you to make that post-civilian transition into like almost a different field, what factors were similar, and kind of like how that transition was for you, because of course everyone's story is different, so kind of like what happened, I guess you could say.
So I think it comes down to, that basic of when we transition, it's about thinking about what's our why, what's our purpose, who do we really want to be in life, and what do we want to do? And so for me, the bottom line up front, great military acronym, BLUF, is being of service and giving back. That's my why. And it always has been. And I know that that's my purpose, which is why I do what I do today. To get to that point though, there's the story behind that, so, and I know we've talked before, but, for those that are watching, for me, even though I had this, sounds like this, and I did the successful career, retired as a colonel, ooh, wow, things that honestly, yes, I'm proud of. At the same time, behind the scenes, what most people never saw or understood was that I dealt with a lifetime of post-traumatic stress from a childhood trauma. And then exacerbated trauma, while I was active duty because of what I did as part of my career field, and not ever really processing the loss of life, that went with that. And then on top of that, I had anxiety and depression. For years, I had suicide ideation. So, I'd always wear this mask of this, happy, outgoing, go-getter. And then behind the scenes was just this debilitating depression and anxiety. I'd actually blocked out my trauma from childhood, and I didn't remember it until my mid to late 20s. And then, so just the impact that has and the low self-esteem that went with that, that always was kind of a driver for me to do more, be better, which, in some ways helped, but it also led to on several occasions. And just that constant stress and the stressors that are in my body, took a toll because it led to burnout. It led to health issues. It led to this kind of yo-yo weight gain and loss process, over the years for myself. At one point in time, I had high blood pressure. I was borderline obese. I was starting to have sleep issues. And so there was just a lot of other health issues that were also happening. And it was all because of these, main things that were happening behind the scenes. And so it wasn't until actually once I left duty and transitioned careers, then a couple big things that happened in my life. And one of them was after 19 and a half years, I got divorced. And so literally I was, about 49 and I was starting over professionally and personally. No idea, what did I want to do in my life? I wasn't, I'd already resigned from the Y because I realized that particular assignment wasn't, or job wasn't what I wanted it to do. But there were other things that filled me up more, like doing the fitness instructor and then kind of having to go, okay, well, what do I really want to do? And then also because that's about a point where I hit that rock bottom point. And two things happened. One, I started contemplating suicide. To be honest with you, it was that suicide ideation was just so present and the depression was so there. And the negativity towards myself was so there that I was like, if I were to just die, it wouldn't matter because I didn't matter. That's literally what I thought. And it took, I remembered a promise I had made to my parents to never do that and put them through that because they've had other family members where that has happened for suicide. And then when you think of the statistic, that every day about 20, on average, about 20 veterans, unfortunately, die because of suicide. So that was one piece that kind of turned things. And then I had read this statistic that had said, we have over 60,000 thoughts a day. And of those 60,000 thoughts, 95% are repetitive. And of those 95%, 80%, guess what, are negative. So holy crap, another great acronym, O for the military, what the over. It was like, okay, I basically was living my life and this anxiety, this depression, the stressors, I was living it on repeat over and over again and negatively. So it was my inner critic, and when I really started then to dive in and realize I'd hit rock bottom and I needed to find a better way and I wanted a better way. And so then that's when I reached out for help for myself, life coaching. I found a life coach. I had done therapy in the past. But I went the coaching route because that was something that I was interested in personally. And through coaching, through an alternative treatment known as emotional freedom techniques, or tapping, which is tapping along acupuncture points. That, and then Boulder Crest Foundation Warrior Path were kind of the three things that really turned my life around. And so much so that, I was like, all right, I want to be a life coach, and I want to be an emotional freedom techniques or tapping practitioner, and doing the Warrior Path, which is progressive and alternative treatment for healing heroes, for combat veterans and first responders. It's a 18-month program where the first week is in residence, and now here in the Pacific Northwest, through the Permission to Start Dreaming Foundation, we actually have a location here, which is awesome. But those things, that's what changed my life in such a huge, impactful way, that knowing who I am and wanting to be of service, wanting to give back. And that's really those connectors. So when you say, hey, Intel sounds like so far from life coaching and fitness, in reality, it's still being of service, and it's still being with people.
Right.
And you're analyzing and working with people just in different ways. And so I love I love being there and being present along someone's journey, as a life coach and as an emotional freedom techniques practitioner, because I've gotten to see everything and be there for people, whether it's a career change, or whether it's working through a trauma, or whether it's trying to beat a addiction or a habit, that they seem to feel stuck in, whether it's, finding a way to work through and resolve depression and anxiety to get to a point where that's not a factor in their life anymore. They're not defined by that. So it's been such an honor that. And then on the flip side, the fitness side, because the dance fitness, and someone go from, oh, I can't dance, to the end of class going, listen, so much fun, I'll see you next. I also do rock steady boxing, which is for those with Parkinson's disease, and the determination, grit, and love of life, that they show every time when they're stepping into the class to start boxing is just awesome. And so I've been doing that now for about 3 years as well. And then the writing is part of being a life coach. So I have the honor of doing that for the Living Local magazine, of writing as a life coach each month. So just another way of service and giving back. And that's what just means so much to me, is really to let people know that they're not alone, and they don't have to suffer, and that there is a way, there is hope, that there is growth, that there is, you can get your life, and you can just feel fulfilled and happy in your life. And that's what I love, and that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, your story is awesome. Like, overall, it's like an amazing thing to hear. And you just being so open about it. And also too, like, even there's anything that individuals do in the military, or even the civilian side, they can find anything to connect to one another. And, serving, like, oh, you were intelligence, and then you went to the life coach. It's still like, you were a mentor, so you're still in a mentorship position, you're helping others, you have a service, you're you're fulfilling that service to others that you still have, which is amazing. And then also too, I think one of the big things is just being open about your journey, or anyone who's listening, if being open about your journey, because a lot of people, especially, this is a podcast, it's going to go up on social media. Some people try to hide on social media, or only post the good things and talk about the good things. But more and more, I think people are being open about what they've been through. And a lot of people, that's also a step in healing, because then they're like, in my mind, especially for me, once I recognize that, oh, there might be something wrong, or, oh, like this thought is on repeat so often, accepting that it exists, and then talking about it, you're accepting that something that is bothering you exists. And now you can be more open, and you can focus on how to potentially, improve how you're feeling based on what you're going through and stuff. But I love that you're so open, because for those of you, she mentioned the Warrior Path, which we actually have a video up about it, and I'm going to have her talk more about it, the Warrior Path, and also to the foundation in general. But where was I going with this? Just being open about the journey that you've been through and like what you've been through, I think is so inspiring and so great to hear. But since we started to talk about it a little bit about the warrior path and the foundation, how about I'll let you, since you explained it best, talk about the foundation, kind of what the foundation does, and how it's played a role in your life and kind of like what your involvement is with them.
Yeah. Well, thank you. First off, thank you. Thank you for letting me have a chance to share that story. And I mean, you can tell I just get lit up because this knowing that there is another way in every cell of my being, to know that there is you can have a happy life, that you can have a fulfilled life, and that you don't have to give in to those thoughts, those negative thoughts and those limiting beliefs we picked up, because they're just that, they're thoughts, and they can change, and you can change. And we have so much ability in ourselves to do that. So in answer to your question with regards to the Permission to Start Dreaming Foundation. So the foundation is here local in Gig Harbor, Washington. And the foundation was actually started by Leslie Main. And this was her why and her way to give back, because unfortunately her son had died from suicide, and going through her grief and loss process and her own healing, starting the foundation was that way of giving back, and being a healing way. And it started through the Race for a Soldier, and then it's since then now grown where not only do we Race for a Soldier, but we have Pull for a Soldier, there's Swing for a Soldier, there's also a monthly huddle, and there's other activities for veterans, and then there's also now a huddle for spouses of veterans that the foundation has. And the whole mission of the foundation, in addition to Warrior Path, which I'll mention more in a moment, but the whole purpose of the foundation is really to give back to, it started with helping veterans, and now it's veterans and first responders, because recognizing that there's over 3 million service members who are post 9/11, that have served deployed since 9/11, and of those, anywhere from 10 to 30% suffer from post-traumatic stress. And it's kind of a sobering statistic when we talk about over 20 suicides a day by veterans, and that there's times where on the responder side, that the number of suicides is greater than in the line of duty deaths. And so, it's sobering when you think about the statistics with that, and things that happen to us as part of our military service, or even before our military service that was also there, and while we're in service. And then unfortunately you also have those that experience sexual trauma within service. But for focusing on the Permission to Start Dreaming Foundation, and a way of being able to reach out to let someone know that they're not alone, that there are opportunities and ways to connect and heal. And one of them, is Warrior Path. And so it started through the Boulder Crest Foundation out in Virginia, and has since expanded. So, and then since then, it's now been if you think of it as a network now, partnered with the Gary Sinise Foundation, and then overarching the Avalon Fund, or the Avalon Network. And it's a 2-pronged approach that it's supporting traumatic brain injury, and then also post-traumatic stress for combat vets and first responders. And those two areas on the post-traumatic stress side, that's through with Boulder Crest. It's also now expanded to 12 sites and working its way up sites nationwide. And it's coming from I have a master's in counseling, overeducated, so a master's in and then also now as a life coach, research and then intel, right? So I'm a little research geek. I love understanding, hey, is this something that's really working for someone? And when they've done the studies of Warrior Path, because as I mentioned, it's an 18-month program. 1 week of it is in residence at these locations, and it's peer-led. It's a peer guide who is helping, or guides who are there helping fellow combat veterans and first responders. And it is so cool because not only because of what you learn, because you're learning about 31 different wellness practices, but then you're also really taking the time to understand, the things in our life. It's not who we are, it's what happened to us. And then gaining and regaining that strength and power and something that's so profoundly negative and turning it to something that is now what we call post-traumatic growth, where you're able to just put it in the bucket of your life of bad experiences, and it's helped shape who we are. And that is, that we can be what we want to be, and then we can be just to help others go through that journey as well. And that 1 week program in the 18-month where you're actually with, your fellow, you go through as a small team, 5 to 8, people, and then you're meeting regularly with your teammates. You have an opportunity where you're meeting regularly with, other alumni from Warrior Path, and then you're also meeting with the guides, on a regular basis. So you have all these wonderful touch points to stay connected as you go through your journey, because for any of us, and it doesn't matter if we're healing from post-traumatic stress or we're veterans or civilians, but the way we learn, right, it isn't linear. It's this little sine wave, it's ups and downs. We learn and then we fall back, and then we learn and then we fall back. And the kind of cool thing about Warrior Path is it's basically these training guardrails. Training's not the right word, but like guardrails, in that sine wave. So instead of having these huge highs and these big crashes that lead a lot of people to stop growing, stop learning, being afraid of making mistakes, you learn that, hey, if you put these wellness practices into place and you put a support system into place, keep going where you want to go. And so that's that's beautiful thing about Warrior Path. And then coming back to the studies, research nerd, because it actually shows that Warrior Path, when they've done the studies, has had an overall about a 66% improvement in post-traumatic growth. There's a 41% decrease in anxiety. There's been a 51% decrease on average in the post-traumatic stress symptoms. I mean, so these are huge when you talk about research and statistics and numbers, and so it's this lasting thing that can happen because of that program and the willingness to put these wellness practices into place in your own life and continue on the healing journey. And I tell you, so I experienced Warrior Path, and I was already probably about a year into my own healing journey. So I'd already done a lot of work. I kind of debated for myself. I was like, well, am I going to be taking a seat of someone who really needs it? That was kind of my mindset at the time. But I had the interview and was accepted into the program. I was like, all right, let's be curious, be open, and realize that I still have a lot to learn. And it was so profound because I'm going to give you it's hard, I'm trying to articulate this, but, and it may not come across, but it's huge, is that, all my life, all this healing, I can honestly say that I love myself and I accept myself. Those were 2 words. I couldn't even say I'm enough. That years ago, I never would have been able to say that. And now I can. Also, I used to jump and flinch at loud noises. Someone scared me, or fireworks went off, or gunfire, and I'd always flinch. I always hated being in annual weapons training because I was like the first lefty at the end of the 80s. And so not only was I flinching because of the gunfire, and I'd flinch when I shot, I'd also flinch because then I'm getting the hot shells, coming from the righty next to me. But so I used to flinch with that. And over the last year, the 4th of July, fireworks went off. I mean, it sounded like we were in a combat zone. I mean, they were in every neighborhood, and you just the cacophony and how loud everything was. I didn't flinch. This past Pull for a Soldier, which is one of the fundraisers that the foundation has in support of veterans and first responders. And it was skeet shooting, and I didn't flinch in the 4 hours that I was there. Just recently, it was one where there was another event And same thing, I realized, I'm not flinching. What's going on? And it's all because of that healing. It's that place where my nervous system is not constantly on overdrive and kicking in, going, oh, danger, danger, fight, flight, freeze. Where I be calm and just go, oh, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what's going on. What do I want to do about it? And so that's just been so freeing to that point. I could have that happen.
Right. No, I really love what the foundation does in general, because I think so. I remember, I think it was a few months ago, I was at drill and I was with my unit and we were talking about what were we talking about? They were talking about resources and what's available for veterans and stuff. And they always mention, okay, the different resources available just through the military, but like not a lot of times I don't think that they either don't know, because sometimes they just don't know what's available in their local area, what resources are available, and also too, just knowing that there is something more local that's available. So like a few months ago, before it was a drill before the run, I mentioned like, hey, like if you know anyone locally that may be struggling, just give them the link to the Permission to Start Dreaming Foundation, and so I put that out there. And I think just everything that the foundation does is amazing, especially I think all the different events and the monthly huddles, having the opportunities for individuals to just come out and talk to someone else is great. And then it's just a matter of just getting the information out there and letting people know that the foundation is here, that the foundation is here with resources available to help veterans and first responders, because it's not only limited to the military, it's also available for, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, law enforcement, EMTs. I knew it was going to happen. I knew they were going to bark. So it was only a matter of time.
Hey, they've been awesome. Yeah. So and the foundation itself, is for all veterans. It's also for active duty, but all veterans, and then also for all first responders. Which, yes, you're talking about firefighter, police, EMT, and then Warrior Path itself is for combat veterans or those that have been deployed to a combat zone, and then for first responders that have been involved in critical incidents. And so that's because of the trauma and the post-traumatic stress that you get exposed to, for that.
Right.
But yeah, great program. It really is. And I love doing it. I've been involved in the foundation now for, I guess, just over 3 years. I started out as a volunteer and then started doing volunteer coordinator. I was working with Race for a Soul as a volunteer, and then started to coordinate the volunteers for the race, and now supporting kind of a volunteer facilitator role as a volunteer, because I do believe in so much in the foundation, what it's done. And then, getting the word out, about Warrior Path, about the foundation, other resources that are out there in the community, because there are some great organizations, and the foundation is one of them. And so, and Warrior Path is a life-changing, or can be life-changing if folks do it. And it's 1 week, 18 months, but 1 week, that's a game changer. We want to have more peace and joy and calm and love in their life, for themselves and for just life in general.
And I think, and this, I think is a good segue into kind of like what I'll be doing today. I think just doing even the small things to get the information about the foundation out there is really big. So my biggest thing,
and it's not a small thing you're doing a 22-mile run. I will say that's not small, and it's huge. And thank you.
So my big thing, let me see if I can get a word in with the dog. So my big thing was, for me, that I struggle with a little bit was for my service is kind of like I didn't think at some points that I wasn't doing enough necessarily, because, and I talk about this, I've talked about this, being open about it, because I was, we were law enforcement and security, but we were in the Navy. So like in terms of actually being deployed with other services, especially into like into the Middle Eastern countries where the security forces do something a little bit different, right. Sometimes me and some others felt like, oh, like we weren't doing enough. So that's something I struggle with for a long time, because I joined the military because I wanted to serve my country, but at some point I didn't think I was doing enough. So it took me
even though you are, but yes, I totally understand.
It took me a very long time to realize that, you don't have to do something so big to make an impact and to actually, do service or have that service to your country and to individuals and stuff. And the thing I've learned, especially over this past year, is like, if you change one person's life, that's one person more than yesterday. So that, and
they agree.
Yeah, they agree. So that's kind of like why I'm doing, for those I've talked about a little bit on social media. I posted about it just a few hours ago. For whatever this video hopefully goes up today on Veterans Day, is just doing one thing to get the word out about the foundation. If it changed one person's life, then that's fantastic. And for me, I think also too, the service related, helping others. I mean, I love helping others. And I think it was just a matter of finding the way that I enjoy to help others. Because
amen. See?
Oh, yeah.
I agree. Amen.
Yeah, I know. It's always cars, because mom's home by herself, dad's not here. So I gotta, hey, because dad's not here. So we have to be extra protective,
Nice.
Yeah. But so my biggest thing was, I think what actually changed was finding a way on how to do something like that to promote foundations or to help others. It's in some way that I enjoy. And I think that was the biggest thing, because especially in the military, at least for the Navy side, and you could attest to this as well, they kind of make suggestions on, if you're going to be a career, this is what you should do. And sometimes some of the stuff is not stuff you enjoy. Like, for example, they're like, what was it? I remember for me personally, they're like, we had evaluations every year, and they're like, well, you have to write it in a way that like it's helping you, like just you. And I'm like, well, I don't like to really talk about myself, or I don't like to do things just for me. That's something I don't enjoy. I like to help others. That's why when I was in my military career, I loved being what they call the field training officer, which is a term also law enforcement use, because we teach individuals how to do their jobs. But the way I thought about it is, I'm helping someone learn their job so they could potentially help others and do their job more effectively, especially when it comes to safety of military members or anyone in general. So it was kind of finding a way that is enjoyable, that I like to do, to help others. And when you find something enjoyable that you like to do, you're more inclined to actually do it. So that's why I'm doing the Ruck March today, because I enjoy fitness. I've been doing some type of fitness now for almost 12 years, because I started lifting when I was 14. That's awesome. Just doing something fitness related to commemorate, to show my gratitude for all that have served or are currently serving, both active, reserves, and again, future, because some people might just be in basic right now, going through their training, getting ready to become full-on service members, and also to get the word out about the foundation and what resources the foundation has and is available for those that are struggling right now with whatever they may be. And just doing it through something fitness related just makes it more enjoyable, at least for me. And again, if anything that we do, whether it be this podcast, putting it up, or someone sees on social media the Ruck March, if it helps one person, then that's one person more than yesterday. So I think that's for me, that was a big mental shift in how I thought about my service, was to do something like this.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's awesome. And I wish you all the best. I can't wait to see how it goes.
So for those that are interested in the Ruck March, because I might still be doing this by the time this video goes up, because it will take some time to do it. I'm gonna I'm going to try to go live and talk about like my why on social media and stuff, so people understand, doing posts about it and stuff. But for those that are interested, I'll give a little background before we start wrapping it up and have you close out whatever you would like to. I did race for a soldier, the 10-mile run, which I'm not a runner. For those of you that may or may not know me, not a runner. I always say this, my body was not made for running. I like to put things up and put things down. That's what I'm good at. So cardio is not the thing. So, but it was the fitness and showing like different training and how it was going. It was a good push to do something different. And again, it was something, it's fitness. Did I really enjoy it? I guess I could say, because I'm thinking about running again. I'm going to be running next year again too. I know that, but, so the ruck march, I'm like, okay, like I like rucking a little more than running because it's just walking, right?
Yeah.
So it's just walking and
with lifting, having something heavy.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Exactly. So the way that it's going to be going, and I'm going to do a video about it too, for those of you listening, that it's 22 miles. The only factors is that it's probably going to be raining of some type. So
because it currently is right now.
Yeah. So how to change it up a little bit. The way that's going to happen is, stay in the neighborhood for most of it. I can come back to the house if it gets too wet and change out whatever clothes may be. And then ending it up at the CrossFit gym I go to, because it's like 2 miles down the road. So at least there'll be some type of exposure, I guess you could say. Yeah. So, but that's cool. But yeah, so the Ruck March, promoting the foundation and just kind of getting the word out there, and something that I enjoy to do, which is fitness. So, and I don't know if it's going to be fun because it is a lot long miles, but
it'll be fun if you tell it it's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell it.
I'll bring 2 of the 3 dogs, because the one doesn't like walking on leash, but I'll bring them so they get tired. So it's good. It should be fun, but it's my way to help the foundation out, because the foundation does so much for individuals. I may not know all of them, I just know Taz from the communications and the time that we spent, but I think it's very important to do for those listening. You don't have to do something big to make an impact on a person. You can do something small, even if it's like, for example, like, I don't know, if someone has trouble at the grocery store, getting something off the top shelf and like helping someone, is something
letting someone know that you're thinking of them,
right?
Or and just with the foundation, or letting someone know that they aren't alone, that there's other resources out there. And you've said it best. It's, if you can help one person, we've done our mission. We've done what we can do. And it's a beautiful thing to see someone change their life. When they a place like where I was in my life. And so, to let someone know that they're not alone, that there's resources out there and available. And so thank you to you for helping support not only the foundation, but your mission then to also let others know that, there is help and resources. So thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoy doing it. I like a lot of people again, I'm going on. I want to close this out so I can actually get out there. But
yes, and I have to go teach Zumba this morning. So
yeah, so this will be the last thing. I love learning and talking and learning about people, because I like to put others first, and especially if someone does something fantastic, or an organization, just putting them on the spotlight, because I like to give credit where credit's due, and also too, like, if you just spend the time to learn about someone, what their life has been through, and ask them questions, it could change their whole perspective for the day, for weeks, for months, whatever it may be. But with that being said, let us close out. So before we go, do you have any closing things to say before we finish off this podcast?
No, just like I already said it. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Have a kick-ass time. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I think it will be good. The headphones are charged. I got all the snacks, just in case. But again, was able to kind of find a plan B, because it is raining. But yeah, that's always a plan B. Also, too, backtrack a little bit to, sometimes you have a goal, you don't always follow plan A. There's plan B, C, whatever it may be. But
Because you're still moving forward.
Exactly. So please let everyone know where they could find you, and also too where they can find like the foundation, what their the emails, the Instagrams, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, and if you could start on the website, PTSDFoundation.org. And then you'll also see the same PTSD F or PTSD Foundation. And that's where you'll see, on Instagram or Facebook, and then from there for the different events that the foundation holds, there's those, and check out the foundation for Warrior Path and for more information there. And then also a link for an application to Warrior Path. And then of course, whether it be supporting someone or through donation, that's how all of the funds, that are the funds that get raised, trying to help be able to, because those that go through a Warrior Path, it's a free program for that combat vet or first responder. And so the more we can able to do just to help our community of veterans and first responders, the better. So thank you. And I can send the links so that way you can see them, in the comments that you post.
Yep. Like she said, I'll definitely post them in the comments. So anyone who's watching this video can go ahead and click on it, click on the links and check out the foundation and all Warrior Path and everything about them. So with that being said, thank you for being on the podcast. I'm very happy we were finally able to get this happen.
Yeah, me too.
I'm excited to also work with the foundation in the future, because it's definitely a foundation that I enjoy working with, and also too the mission is very I think the mission is great, and what the foundation does is great, and it's, for me, it's a cause that I like to support 100%. But again, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being so open about it too, and just being real on the podcast, which is something we strive for on the podcast as well, as for individuals to be 100% open and on, like, have a space that they can share their stories with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But with that being said, my name's Danielle Minetti with M Sister Studios. That's it for this special Veterans Day podcast, and we will see you guys next time.